Love later in life comes with conditions, a lot of them. Kids, exes, a pattern that has already been built. You're merging two lives, not creating one from scratch, and that is way more complicated than a clean slate. Welcome to the Crazy Ex-Wives Club, a podcast dedicated to helping women navigate the emotional journey that is divorce. I'm your host, Erica, and if you're trying to figure out life after the big D, welcome to the club. Whether you're contemplating divorce or dealing with the aftermath or any of the many phases in between, the club has got you covered. Each week, you'll hear stories from women who have been in your shoes. This isn't about spilling tea on divorce details. This is about giving you the tools to take control of your own healing journey. Listen in weekly for advice, tips, and tools to help you move through each stage of the process. Welcome back to another episode of the Crazy Ex-Wives Club. I'm your host, Erica, and today I want to talk about love. Not the first love, but the love we find later in life. This past weekend, I had the opportunity to officiate a wedding for two of our friends. They asked us about a year ago, and I've had the opportunity to watch them in their relationship, in their engagement, and to really gather the themes that I felt they were reflecting in this choice to move forward in marriage. As you know, my partner and I are not in the boat of wanting to ever legally get married again, but we are all about commitment and knowing what you're choosing, and more importantly, choosing to do life with the right person. And I think that there were a couple themes that came up in the ceremony that are really worth diving into today. Whether you're divorced or partnered or married or engaged, these are key pieces about what it really means to love somebody. Now, most of us think about love as something that happens to us. The rush, the butterflies, the young love, that all-consuming feeling of just wanting to be near that person. But here's the thing that nobody tells you. Falling in love, that's the easy part. To be honest, that's a lot of hormones rushing. But staying in love is where the real work lives. And loving somebody later in life, that's a completely different conversation, one that we need to have today. This past weekend, I had the opportunity to officiate a wedding. My partner and I officiated for two of our friends. Now, these two individuals found each other later in life. One had already been married with kids. One had had other engagements, but had not gotten to the altar. And so looking at their love, their choice, their commitment, you know, what struck me about the two of them wasn't the romance, it wasn't the rush, it wasn't the hot and heavy, it was the clarity. After the wedding, I had a chance to sit down and chat with the bride, and she said, you know, this is not the first proposal, this is not the first engagement, but this is the first time I actually said, okay, this is the right one to continue through on. Because they were having very clear conversations around, hey, I'm not perfect. There are things I need to work on. I know there are things that you're looking for in this relationship, but who I am right now, can you accept it? If this is what it is this enough? And are you willing to say yes to this version of me? They weren't building on hope. They weren't building on potential, which we so often do when we're younger. They were two people choosing each other exactly as they are. When we're younger, love is often built around who we hope someone might become. But love later in life asks something entirely different. It asks us to accept someone exactly as they are, not as a project, not as potential, not as an idea, but fully, completely, and honestly. So here's the real question I want you to sit with. If you are a partner, do you love them for who they are, or are you loving them for who you hope they'll become? Because those are two very different relationships. And if the answer is potential, that's not love. That's a project, and people are not projects. It can be challenging to find the space in between, because I myself am guilty of seeing my partner and seeing what I believe his full potential is, and seeing how small shifts or big shifts or that scary word of change could create something different in his life. But I had to sit with the fact of, if those things never change, if he stays exactly who he is today, do I still love him? And that's the question. Do I love my partner for who he is? I can still want other things for him. I can still see other opportunity. I think it is the nature of who we are as a woman, because we look for opportunity, because we look for growth and development, because we are typically the feeling side of the relationship, the side that holds the desire. The female holds the desire, the man holds the execution, if we're talking real black and white polarity things here today. So looking at that, it is natural for a woman to desire evolution, growth, change. And it is natural for a man to say, this is good enough and we can stay the same. And this is where we meet that point in a relationship where we have to ask ourselves, can I love him for who he is? Because real love, especially love after divorce, asks you to look at this person, all of them, the patterns that drive you crazy, the wounds they're still carrying, the habits that aren't going to change. And to ask yourself honestly, do I still want this? Not the idea of them, not who you hope they become, but who they are right in front of you, because they are showing you who they are. And the reason that it matters so much when we look at love later in life is that love later in life comes with conditions, a lot of them. Kids, exes, a pattern that has already been built. You're merging two lives, not creating one from scratch. And that is way more complicated than a clean slate. You don't just fall in love with the person. You choose to love everything that came before that created who they are. And if you can't accept those conditions, then you're not actually choosing that person. You're picking and choosing aspects of who they are, potential of who they can become, or you're choosing the idea of them. And when we build a relationship around the idea of somebody, that will eventually crack, because we are humans having a human experience. We cannot always live up to the other expectations, or we both have different expectations of what it means. The realities of merging life later in life come with a lot of different things that have to be worked through, and there's not always a how-to book. What if the kids don't like you? Okay, this one comes up a lot. You know how many relationships I've seen have ended because the kids do not like the new partner, or the relationship continues, but it puts such a strain on the parent because the kids don't want to be around the new partner. They start to try and leverage or manipulate that parent back to their side. And how often are kids really truly aware of why they are being triggered or why they are doing what they are doing? And this is where it comes up before, that getting divorced when your kids are younger tends to be a little bit easier because their ideas on what it means to be in love or what this relationship looks like are not as formed as when they get to high school or when they get into their 20s. Kids can have a lot of resentment. They can pull a lot of shit. They can manipulate things. And it's not because kids are evil. It's because they're human, having a human experience. And all they know is that there is something that doesn't feel safe or doesn't feel good. And they are going to try and work the situation to get back to what feels better in their nervous system. You know, one of the other things that has come up a lot for me is that you can't always go to your partner when the kids are the problem. So as I've mentioned, I have 3 stepkids and I have my own son, and the dynamic between my son, how he was raised and how his 3 kids were raised were very different. The kids operate different. Everybody likes each other. That's not a problem. Thank God we don't have any kids trying to manipulate the situation to cause a breakup. Everybody really likes each other, and it's still hard. And when it's hard, and when his kids are the reason that I'm feeling resentful or overwhelmed or frustrated, the last thing I can do is really take that to him. Because sometimes all I need to do is vent about it, vent about my frustrations, vent about how hard it is to try and balance all of these pieces. And when I take something like that, a venting frustration to him about his own kids, what happens? He's naturally going to step in to defend them because they're good kids. All 4 of them are good kids, and all 4 of them have different things that they are working through. So where do you go? What does your support system look like when you can't go to your partner with the problem? Because if you were in the old school, the traditional family model where it was husband and wife and it's their kid, well, then it's the 2 parents against the problem. But when we blend families later in life, we get one parent defending one side and I will defend my child. And it's taken work. It has honestly taken work. The times that my partner has brought up opportunities about my own son, the instant reaction is to step in and defend the mama bear movement. The like, oh, you don't love him the same way I do, or you don't see him the same way I do, or you don't know all the things that he's gone through the same way I do. And that is not an issue between my partner and my son. That is an issue for me to get clear on. Can I step out of that role? Can I really have the hard conversations with my partner to understand how do we want to parent this? Where is the value in how he sees things differently? And is my son receptive to it? We have the same conversations around his kids. What are the roles? What's my role? What's his role? How do we blend that together? And what that leads into is an honest question of, can you genuinely love your stepkids? Because full confession, the love I have for my son is different than the love and appreciation that I have cultivated for his kids. Because we are ingrained to naturally love our children. It's part of that survival mechanism. We created them, we birthed them. We are always going to protect them and love them, even if we don't like the behaviors that they're doing. But when the kids in your relationship are not yours, then that love is not a given. That love becomes a choice again. And we work through the process just the same way as we work on rebuilding love in a relationship, because you might not always want those stepkids to be there. And there's a lot of things that you cannot control or even influence when it comes to stepkids. There are absolutely boundaries or expectations you can set. There are ways that you protect your heart, your time, your energy, your own bubble. But about 1% of the time, does that mean that they change their behaviors? I mean, my partner and I are very, very aligned on how we want all of the kids to treat each other, how we want them to talk to us, the level of respect, the expectations we have. And yet, we still have massive conversations when those two expectations don't align, because what I hear in my head is maybe very different than what he hears. Or in my head, I want it the full expression of, pleases and thank yous, or thinking through the impact on somebody else. And in his mind, he's doing the Papa Bear defensive thing of like, my kids are doing the best they can. So love later in life comes with all these conditions. The exes, oh my God, the woman is never gone, right? You are always going to still have to deal with his ex-wife. I don't have to deal with her directly. We don't text or communicate or talk directly. That is part of his responsibility, just like he doesn't talk directly to my ex unless my ex shows up at a sports or a school function, but that person is still there. And that is still a weight that the individual has to carry. On my side, I carry balancing the role of who my current partner is, how we parent, what we create in our house, and how I co-parent with my ex, just the same as my partner does with his ex-wife. It creates a very complicated web that is not as simple as young love, which is why it becomes so much more important in being able to decide, like, do I love this person or do I love the potential? One of the other big pieces too was just figuring out, like, how do we merge households? Because good Lord, did that rock my world. And I can tell you that after I moved in, we had been together for years. We always do a slow merge where we take our time in making changes. And so this change was months in the making of deciding, is this what we want to do? Is this the right choice? What fears and worries do I have about relocating my son? How do I work through those? How do I keep the conversation open? And still, when we finally moved in, moving is hard. It's overwhelming. It was all of my stuff that I had to figure out. As he stated in one of our many arguments over me trying to not be overwhelmed at the move-in, he's like, it isn't my stuff. I can't help you find a place for it. I can't help you unpack the boxes, which is true. But for quite a few months, I felt like I made a mistake. For quite a few months, I was like, oh, maybe I need to move into an apartment. Maybe this was the wrong choice. Maybe this wasn't the right solution, because merging two households when I don't know what of his cups and other mugs matter to him, like what can go, what has to stay, all of those are different conversations than when you're building something together. So I felt completely alone. I felt completely isolated, and there wasn't anybody I could go to because there wasn't anybody else who understood what was happening. Now, there are a ton of divorce support groups. There are a ton of single mom support groups. There are a ton of co-parenting and step family groups. But the more that I tried, the more that I found that their point of view was just different than mine. So I needed those groups because I'd show up and I'd hear that we were all struggling with the same thing. The kids were not as respectful as you wanted, or they didn't have the same focus on chores in the house. And your partner was doing the best he could. But when he was gone, what happened? I felt seen in that. I finally realized that I wasn't so alone on the struggles that were happening because it was way harder than trying to parent my own child. But the other part that was really alienating is nobody had the same point of view that we want to move forward with love and grace and acceptance. Because I don't believe that when you blend a family, that the partner or the kids are actively doing things to cause trouble. Now, yes, sometimes they are. But when they do that, again, it's not because they're evil. It's because their nervous system is triggered. It's because they are having a reaction to a nervous system activation around safety. So if we lead with that lens, I remember sitting in one stepmom group and the woman was venting about her now husband's kids, and that the one kid, we've all been there if you've had kids, was still picking boogers and wiping it on things. A behavior that has to change. You do not put a finger up the nose. I still have a stepkid who I catch putting a finger up the nose and have to be like, dude, tissue, we don't do that anymore. So she was having a hard time with it. And instead of us moving forward in love and grace of like, hey, it's just a little kid. It's like an 8-year-old. This is just a behavior that has to be reinforced. Instead, we were in a triggered moment about how much she just wanted the kids gone. Valid feelings. I have felt that way myself, but they're not a real solution. Because when you choose that person, when you choose that this is your next chapter, you're choosing to learn how to deal with the conditions that were already in that person's life before you showed up. It means that you're choosing to find a way to love and embrace those kids. It means that those kids have a right to feel safe and welcome in the new space that you're creating with their dad. And that, again, is why the club is so special to me. Because you can find a lot of divorce groups, but ones that really focus on this belief of, I want us both to be better on the other side. I'm willing to extend grace because we're human, having a human experience, which means we get triggered, which means we're not perfect, which means we don't always say the right things, which means that your feelings are valid just as much as their feelings are valid. So I built it. I built it because we needed a space to be able to come together and to be able to say, like, this really sucks. This really sucks about divorce co-parenting and learning to parent with your new partner and learning how to love kids that aren't yours. It's hard. Like one of the hardest things that I have ever done. And I had such a different plan for what my blended family would look like. And when that plan didn't happen, all that same grief had to come up and had to be processed. And it had very little to do with the kids, even if the kids were the trigger that showed me the thing that I really wanted. I can't tell you how many times I made them a meal of something that my son really enjoyed when he was little and they wouldn't touch it. And I spent the rest of the night crying in the bedroom because I tried so hard. I put my heart out there and it got rejected. Not because it really had anything to do with me. They don't have to like whatever I cook, but it was very triggering in the experience. So we made the club. We gave you a spot to come in, to vent, to share the frustrations, to say this sucks and it's hard, and to be able to choose how we want to lovingly move forward. I did not want to hate these little stepchildren. There's nothing wrong with them, but I was the adult acting like a child and I needed to work on my own feelings. So we know we're not perfect, but I know that we're all worthy of love and everyone in this equation deserves the same. And it can be so tempting that when we find a new partner, let's just ignore the past. Let's just build a life when it's just us and not have to deal with the other pieces. But again, that's not real love. Real love is about choosing to accept all of the pieces that this person is bringing with them. And it's hard. And it goes back to a lot of self-work on you. This wasn't my first go round with learning how to choose love consciously. So before I knew that everything was happening in my marriage, things were rough. Story of everyone's life, right? By the time you get to divorce, by the time you find out that there's another woman, by the time you separate, things have been kind of crappy for quite a few years. Years prior, I knew that things had become critical because I knew that I had stopped seeing my now ex, then husband, clearly. I was resentful. I was overwhelmed. I couldn't find a single thing to say that I actually loved about that man. And because I didn't want to get divorced, I didn't want to walk away, and I didn't know about the affairs yet, I made the decision to do the work. I made the decision to look at love as a choice, not an automatic happening. So I started to do the work to fall back in love with my then husband. And it started with creating a gratitude list. I deliberately started making lists. What are 10 things that I really love about this person? It was a hard freaking list to make the first time. I remember sitting down and being like, oh, this will be so easy. I just need to write 10 things down that I love or appreciate about him. And I started the list, and I don't think I could get past 3. I was like, I love that we have our son. I love that we have our dogs. And then I couldn't come up with anything else because the years of sweeping aside what I really needed, of not feeling seen, of not feeling heard and validated had taken their toll. And it took work for me to really start to focus in. What are some of the little things, not the big feelings that he gave me, but like, I appreciate the fact that he mowed the grass. I appreciate the fact that he made dinner. I had to train my mind to shift from criticism to appreciation, actively seeking the reasons that I fell in love with him in the first place. And as I strengthened that muscle, as I shifted my lens, what naturally happens? More appreciation, more awareness, more love, more acceptance. At first, it felt like a lot of resistance. At first, it felt really hard. At first, I just wanted to throw in the towel, but it became a discipline. It became a shift. Now, part of me sometimes sat down and was like, oh, if you had only skipped that step, you could have been out of all of this chaos a lot earlier. But I think that it was such a valuable lesson to learn because now sitting in a space of co-parenting, of looking at 3 children who were not my direct children, but are my stepchildren, I use those same practices. What do I love and appreciate about each of them? When they're at their other house, how do I reflect on the happy moments, on the times that we've laughed together? How do I train that muscle to look for the places where it feels good, where it's flow, where it's love? And the more we focus on that, instead of focusing on the nose picking and booger wiping, the more we can shift the dynamic in the relationship. Where you choose to put the work is where you will reap the rewards. So love is an action. It is a verb. It is a choice to show up day in and day out and say, I choose to see this person and to appreciate this person. Because otherwise, all love will fade. I mean, you could even look at the fact of like, what is your favorite dessert? Your favorite ice cream flavor? Mine's cookies. I love cookies. Would my love of cookies fade if it kind of was just always there? If it kind of always just did the same thing? For sure. If I only got to eat one cookie for the rest of my life, I probably would be like pretty meh on that cookie by time life was over. We have to choose to find the things that we want to love about the other person. Now, I choose to believe that we don't fall out of love. We stop choosing them. We get busy. We get hurt, we get resentful, we get overwhelmed. We stop doing the small things that kept us connected. And it happens to all of us. If you ever had small kids, if you've ever been sleep deprived, whether it was a kid or a puppy that did it, it is hard to not fall into those habits. So love is not a feeling you maintain. It is a practice you have to return to over and over and over again. You will go through seasons where it is easier to love somebody and where it is harder. But that practice looks different every day, just like going to the gym, just like choosing to eat healthy. It is a practice. It is a commitment. Some days it's the gratitude list. Some days it's choosing to not pick a fight. Like some days it's me choosing to say, we are in a bad pattern that I know will end up in a fight. So I'm going to go to bed, or I'm going to remove myself, or I'm going to take a walk because I'm choosing not to continue to let this negative momentum build. And some days it means that you're showing up for your partner when you'd rather shut down. But at the end of it, it is always a decision. It is always a choice. It is always a returning to that person. And both people have to do it. I remember reading a book, a yoga book, P.K. Iyengar. I don't remember what his first initials were, but he talked about like as somebody on a spiritual journey, as somebody whose entire purpose and dedication of life is growth and evolution. What do you do when your wife is not on that same path? And he talked about the fact that it's almost like every day he leaves the house and he goes to walk this spiritual path of enlightenment. And at the end of every day, he chooses to walk back to his partner, to meet her where she is at. She's not transcendental in meditation for X number of hours every day. She's maintaining the house and raising the kids and making the dinner. And so he had to choose to return to that every night, to see the beauty in it, to find the gratitude in it. So let's make this practical for you, because we can talk in theory forever. But until we really break it down, awareness without action is just a really good therapy session. That's why we can talk about it all day long, but we need to do something different if we want it to change. So whether you apply these tools to stepkids, whether you apply them to your ex, whether you apply them to your current partner, whether you apply them to some of the family members that maybe don't fully support your decision, but you want to improve the relationship. These two processes that I'm about to share with you will set you up for success in any of those things. So the first thing, I want you to get real about who's in front of you. Get honest with yourself about who you actually love, not who you hope they'll become, not what they represent, like safety, stability, not being alone anymore. It can be so tempting to move into something and say, I can make this work. I can make this work so the rest of the stuff that I don't like ends. Not that, not their potential, but who they are in front of you. I remember some of the times when I found myself tripping over this question. Because as you can imagine, somebody who loves growth and development, reading self-help books, constantly diving into how can we become more efficient, better, grander on the scale of things. It's hard to be in partnership with me and not have me find things that we could do differently. And I have a partner who, when we first met, said, I am who I am, and I am not changing. And I said, I think growth and potential always happens. People always evolve. And he said, to some extent, but like who I am today is who you will always have. I am not going to do that thing where somebody tries to change me again. So I understood that. I respected that. And when we'd hit those moments, or maybe it was around the kids, like, hey, if we did this thing a little differently, like reading at night, reading before bed, that was a non-negotiable in my household growing up. It was a non-negotiable in my house for my son. His kids, not so much. My partner doesn't really love to read. His kids don't really love to read. So when I looked at some of the other challenges we were having, I was like, oh, if we got them into reading and elevated their reading skills, a lot of these other problems would go away. I tried to change how my partner needed to parent or how he wanted to parent. And I started to butt heads, and it started to create resistance, and it started to create some arguments. And I remember sitting down and closing my eyes and reflecting on my partner and saying, who this man is, do I love him? And I could reflect on all of the pieces, the snapshots, that movie of your life that played over the time we had together, all the places and the things that he did that I loved so much. And I said, yes, I do love him. And I said, then can you accept that he is going to be the man that he is going to be? He's not going to always parent the way you want. Things are not going to change as fast as you want. But can you accept him? If nothing ever changes, would I still choose this? And you have to ask yourself that, because if the answer is, no, I really need this thing to change, then you need to do yourself and your partner the respectful thing and end the relationship, or have the conversation. Hey, if this thing doesn't change, this is not a relationship for me. Are you willing to make the change? But so often we try and get this change to happen, or we ask for them to change, and then we just are left frustrated. So the first thing I want you to do is to really sit down and think about that person that you want this relationship to be better with, that person that you want to love more. Can I love them exactly as they are? I've done it with all three of my stepkids. I've done it with some of my family members. Can I stop trying to change them? Can I stop trying to give them a way that, in my opinion, would be easier on them? It's not my life to live. It's theirs. So can I accept them exactly for who they are? The second thing is this gratitude list. So second is to start a list, an active list on that person. Start reflecting on the things that you love about that person, or maybe the things you loved about that person when you first met. Because so often the things that we really loved about somebody when we first met are also the things that really drive us nuts a little bit later, because they get bigger or they get more. And we typically try and move away from something. So if your last partner and you fought all the time, you might move into a relationship where there really is not a lot of conflict, where your partner just kind of agrees with you, where he doesn't really push back. And in the beginning, oh, this feels so amazing. But as the relationship progresses and as you try and have more honest conversations and your partner continues to just agree with you, it probably brings a lot of frustration. So you need to cultivate an appreciation for the pieces that they do bring. What does that list look like? When I butt heads with my partner, one of the big ones is I want more quiet time. He loves to be social. When we are really out of balance or out of alignment, when I'm working too hard, I'm pushing too much, he wants to help me find fun by getting me out, by teasing me, by bringing that light playfulness. But I am so far from that vibe. I am super serious, work mode, get it done, do the work. That creates a really big divide. And when that happens, I sit in the spot and I say, but wait a second, you know what you loved about this man in the beginning is that he made play and fun a non-negotiable, which is crucial for me, who does not prioritize play and fun. And then I can lean into my gratitude for him being who he is. That is a balance. Is it always easy? No, because it's something that I'm lacking on my side and I need him to bring. But it is much easier to line up when we're both taking care of who we are and what our energy looks like. So start your gratitude list. It could be as small as I really appreciate that he buys me coffee. Or, like maybe you're looking at your mom. I really appreciate that she was there for me when I was in high school. Whatever that thing is, write the list. And then I challenge you to continue to add to the list. So not only are you creating this gratitude list of all the pieces that you appreciate about what they have done, it's in the moment when you're looking at that list, I want you to reread the list. Say, yeah, I love how this person shows up this way, and feel it in your body. It's going to start small. It's going to start teeny tiny as that little feeling, that little love feeling, whether that's warm or whether that's tingly or whether it just feels good in the body. It's going to start tiny. And the more you train the muscle and the more you add to the list and more you sit in that list and revel in it, there are pieces that I am so grateful for that my partner does. And there are times when I look at him and think, is this going to work? Because we are so far apart right now. And in those moments, those are the little awareness moments where you go, we're not lined up. What do I need to do? Maybe he needs to do. So maybe he needs to go out and play some sport and unwind and do his thing. And maybe I need to go take a nap or meditate or talk with my girls. But what do we need to do to bring ourselves back into heart alignment? Because when we are in heart alignment, we are aligned. When we are in heart alignment, when we believe in love and abundance, when we feel good about our world and ourself and our responsibilities, when we're not overwhelmed, when life is full of abundance and space and time, we can love and accept people exactly as we are. We stop trying to change people when our life feels good. And when our life doesn't feel good, we seek to change somebody else to alleviate the stress in our own life. So start with alleviating the stress in your own life, and you'll require a lot less change from other people. And you know what happens? When you love people exactly as they are, they're very excited to show up even more. They're very excited to meet you in that love, grace, and abundance. They're very excited to be more giving and more forgiving. So these two practices to get really clear on, can I choose to love this person exactly as they are? And then the gratitude list to rebuild love and appreciation in a relationship that has been strained are going to help you maintain that love is a verb, that love is a choice. It's not about ignoring red flags. It's about not letting the ordinary moments of love go unseen, because life gets busy and we stop paying attention. It's one of the things that my partner loves to do, and it drives me batty because in my marriage, I got too busy and I didn't see the ordinary moments that my then husband was doing for me. And after we were separated, I went back and I owned it. And I said, I'm sorry, because I never saw it. I never saw the work that you put into to mowing the yard or to putting salt out or to shoveling the snow or whatever it was. These small things that landed on his plate more than they landed on mine. All I could see was how full my own plate was and how he wasn't taking anything off my plate. And I committed to never letting those little moments go unseen again in a relationship. I committed to really working on training my mind to find the little things to be appreciative to. And I work very hard on it now. And when I get busy and when things go unseen, my partner loves to do things and not tell me. Like the door handle was broken and it only moved one way up instead of down. And then I remember all of a sudden using it, turning it down, it opened. And I had to sit there and think about how long have I been opening the door without realizing that it was something he just took care of. He didn't need thanks for it. He just did it. But he also does it because he likes to drive me a little bit nuts, because then I seek these things out. It is so easy to let the ordinary moments go by without seeing them, without acknowledging them. And so we've got to build that muscle back. The more we focus on that muscle, even on ourselves. What am I doing really well today? What am I really proud of? What am I really proud of in my kids? What am I proud of my stepkids? What am I proud of my partner? We can change how our relationships continue to evolve and grow. Because love later in life, round 2, or round 3. It's not a consolation prize. It's not a settling. It's not a, I just want somebody to get through life with. It will be the most intentional love because you have to choose to accept all the other pieces that come with it. It will ask more of you than young love ever did, but it also gives so much more back because the other person chooses to love you exactly as you are, with all your wounds, with your uncertainties, with the baggage that you bring with. So you get to walk in knowing who you are. You've lived a life. You've cultivated what you want in your life. You know what you need. And then you're willing to build that chapter with somebody else. So whatever chapter you're in, whether you're healing or rebuilding or just surviving today, love is always available to you, even when we are just focused on giving it to ourselves. So find that love and kindness today. Write a gratitude list about yourself. What are you so proud of in yourself? If there isn't another person you want to shine that on. And if you're in a relationship and you're head over heels in love, how are you going to keep cultivating it? Because when it shows up, love later in life comes full of attachments, but you can love all those attachments and conditions as well. Because what we cannot do is say, I really love this person. I just need him to do a few more things for me, because that is not loving him exactly as he is. Start small. Start by shifting your focus, and I can guarantee whether or not the other person changes, you will change. Life will feel better. Life will feel easier. Life will feel so much more fulfilling and filled with love because you choose to seek out reasons to love other people. And when you choose to seek out reasons to love other people, more love is returned to you. So until next week, give yourself grace, spend some time cultivating love, and we'll be back soon. And that's it. Another great episode of the Crazy Ex-Wives Club, a podcast for women learning how to heal from their divorce. Tune in next week for more advice and tips to help you figure out life after divorce. And until then, give yourself grace, do the best you can, and know that this is all part of the process.